Cool. All right, we're gonna get started. You guys ready for notes? Yes? Toy? Ready for notes? Yep. Brooklyn? Ready? Okay. So, we are gonna be moving on to the last question for the genetic variation exam. This is about population genetics, and population genetics looks at the big picture. So what's really cool about this topic, and also just genetics in general, is the first bit of it was really looking at the molecular end of genetics, so understanding how things are operating in the cell. And the second half now is looking at the big picture things, how are things happening with populations and like in real life. The way I would describe this is like thinking about ecosystems, thinking about animals and things that we see with those sort of trends. So there's a lot of range that you can do with this area of science if you want to go down it. So the first thing to think about with genetics, for population genetics, is what are we actually looking at in this scheme of things. I'm actually going to start writing my notes in the middle of the paper because there's going to be stuff that I'm going to add. And so I want to kind of move in both directions of my paper. So the first thing that we need to do is define the term, I'm just going to move that so it's straight, genetic diversity. And you guys have actually seen this. So genetic diversity is just how we measure the genetic variation in a gene pool. So yeah, genetic diversity is the measure of the different genes that we have in a gene pool. You guys have heard this concept before. I don't know if you guys remember, one of the first activities we did for this topic was the fluffy muffin activity. Do you guys remember how I had you draw birds? And then we did like a survivor game, and if you had like big eyes, your bird lived, and if you had small eyes, your bird died, and things like that.
Mrs. Blurry.
Is it blurry? Let me fix that. Better? Okay. So some things to think about with genetic diversity. There's some things to keep in mind. The more genetic diversity I have, the better chances I have for survival when it comes to my population. So we want to have genetic diversity. That is a real benefit for us. So I'll just write that down as an extra note, and we'll see that in real life with some online kind of softwares. But something to keep in mind that you guys have seen before is that more genetic diversity, better chances of survival for that species. Do you guys know what I mean by more genetic diversity? No? So more genetic diversity means more differences in our individuals in a species. So like different hair colors, different eye colors, different beak sizes, that's genetic diversity. So think of the word like diversity. We're like, oh, we go to a diverse school. We have a lot of people that are from different countries, different ethnicities. That's what we're thinking about when we're thinking about diversity. So we want to see that in our population because it means we have a better chance of surviving. Are we okay with that so far? Okay, cool. So let's start breaking that down. So a new word that we see here is gene pool. So with that gene pool, what we're talking about is all of the organisms of a species. So we're only looking at one type of animal in that population. So there's lots of words that we need to break down there. So there's a few words that I want to break down there. The first word is organism. Have you guys heard of that word before? What does organism mean? Just a living thing, one living thing. I am an organism, you are an organism. That's what an organism is, one living thing. Yeah, humans are organisms. My cat is an organism. The tree is an organism. Anything that's living is an organism, but it's an individual. So we're talking about one thing. So organism is an individual. And it's important that we differentiate these terms so that way when you're writing, you know which term to grab. So that's just an individual. All right. Species, again, is another one of our words. What is a species?
Different foods.
Different animals, different plants, yeah? Do you know what the requirement is to be in a species?
Negative.
How do I know cats and dogs are different? Other than they're just different. They look different. Do you know what the key thing that we use to decide that? You know what would be ideal? Have you ever seen the TV show Cat Dog?
Yeah.
Yeah? So we know in real life we can't breed cats and dogs together. And that's how we know they're different species. So the way we define species is that these two organisms can breed together and have successful offspring. Those offspring need to be able to breed and then produce the next generation as well. So species are just, they can breed and make fertile offspring. Do you guys remember what the word fertile means? You might have heard of fertility. Some people struggle with fertility and they can't have babies. So that's what it means. It means we need to breed these two animals together. They have to have offspring, and those offspring need to be able to have offspring. If they can't do that, then they're different species. The cool example is when you breed a tiger and a lion together, you get a liger. That's a real thing. Do you want me to show you guys some pictures so we can see it? Yeah? Okay. A liger. So ligers are real. And I'm something, yeah, there we go. So ligers are like these things here.
Is that real?
Those are real.
What's a soup bug mus?
Because it's a cross between a lion and a tiger.
This looks fake.
No, it's real.
I'm not gonna lie, it looks like a lion has traditional.
Yeah, and we can look at the Wikipedia page because there's a Wikipedia page for it by the looks of it. Liger, wiki. Go back here. Here we go. Oh, that's the film. I want the animal. I want the cat. There we go. It's got its own Wikipedia page too. So a liger is the offspring of a male lion and a female tiger. So that's what it looks like over there. A liger. They're in the movie Napoleon Dynamite.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Are they together to procreate?
So they have been put together. The lion and the tiger have been put together to procreate. They make an offspring that we call a liger. But the liger cannot have offspring of its own.
Why not?
Because the chromosome numbers don't match. So remember how we talked about meiosis and how the chromosomes need to divide up to make successful sex cells? Ligers can't do that because the chromosome numbers don't match. So there's enough similarities between lions and tigers that they can breed together and make an offspring, but that offspring is not fertile because it can't make its own eggs and sperm. So the line ends there. So that's what happens with ligers. So that's why lions and tigers are different species. Huh? They won't die. They will live a full life, but they won't be able to have babies.
So that's the end of the...
That's the end of that generation.
This is boring.
So you see why you don't breed those two things together naturally.
How about a cheetah and a lion?
Huh?
Cheetah and a lion?
A what and a what?
A cheetah.
A cheetah and a lion? I don't know. Should I look up hybrid animals? The other example is a donkey. I think. Is it a donkey? No, mule. Mules are donkeys and a horse. So if we cross a donkey and a horse together, we get a mule. No, donkeys and horses are two different things.
those like
Pamilya the size of a donkey.
Let me show you. Horse, mule. Or horse, donkey, mule. Here we go.
But they look.
They look similar, and that's because they have similar genetics. But they don't have similar enough genetics that they can produce offspring from this point.
So
Also,
it's there.
So it ends there. So, horse, mule, these two can breed together. They make a mule, but the mule won't be able to have more. This is where it stops.
So I don't know what tiger and a cat.
Huh?
Tiger and a cat.
Tiger and a cat? They're probably too dissimilar. I don't think you can get a tiger and a cat together.
Well, tiger is a cat.
No, tiger is a big cat. But you can't take like a domestic house cat and breed it with a tiger.
Yeah.
There's limitations to how far you can take these hybrid animals. Should I find some more?
Yeah, is there any more animals?
Hybrid animals. Let's see.
It's the shark. What?
Oh, here we go.
It's a horse.
Bored Panda has 18 hybrid animals we can look at. Okay, here's our liger, which is a male lion and a female tiger. There's also a tigon, which is a male tiger and a female lion. Oh, that's really pretty.
Yeah, I like that one.
That's a zonkey, which is a zebra and a donkey. Oh my god, it's so cute. All right, here's a male jaguar with a female lion. Jag lion. Oh, those are pretty too. All right, here's a goat and a sheep.
How do you say this?
A geep. Geep. I think that's my guess. All right, here is a roller bear, which is a polar bear and a brown bear. This is happening a lot because of climate change, and so the polar bears are moving closer into the brown bear territories.
This is a brown bear, the same thing as a grizzly bear.
I guess so, because it's saying grizzly bears. So I'm guess maybe? I don't know. This is a coyote and a wolf.
Yeah, coyotes are small animals.
Yeah. Here is a zebroid, which is a zebra, and any equine, so that's any horse.
That's wrong.
You guys are very judgmental. All right, here you go. A Savannah cat, which is a domestic cat, and a several, which I'm not really sure. No, I don't want notifications from you. I think that's a wild cat. All right, here's a wolfen, which is a male killer whale, which is the orca, and a female bottlenose dolphin. That's a weird looking one. All right, here's a beefalo, which is a buffalo and a cow. It's a crack up. Oh, I love the name. Here's another one, a hinny, which is a female donkey and a male horse. The other way around is a mule.
Also, a male donkey.
A male donkey and a female horse. This is a narula, which is a narwhal and a beluga. Narwhals are the ones with the horns, right?
Yeah. No? No. What did you just say?
Narwhals? Those are the ones with the horns, aren't they? They don't look real. My goodness. Okay. This is a camel with a llama.
I thought, but can they?
Can they procreate us?
Which ones?
Camels.
Probably not. I would say most of these hybrids are probably going to be the end.
What did?
Wow.
I know, they're
Have
cute.
you seen that one, Miss?
Daiso?
It's all like a human and a monkey. Oh,
Can't happen, we're too different.
it's like HIV.
Yeah, but that's how we think HIV was transmitted, because we think that either someone ate monkey meat or they like got into a fight with an ape and their blood contaminated or something.
What's up, what you asked? They consider it.
Oh, here's another one. A lepon, which is your male leopard and a female lion. The lard is two different types of ducks.
That one's boring.
Yeah, I know, it's just a duck. All right, this one's a cow and a European bison. All right, that's all I got. Those are the 18.
So like HIV started from monkey, right?
Yeah, because it was originally originally a monkey disease. Or a viral infection that was originally found in monkeys.
How did it become like a disease?
So it mutated and it was able to infect humans. just like the coronavirus. So the coronavirus started in bats, it mutated, and then it could affect humans.
Is that the reason why it's like for like sexual stuff?
It can be, but it could also be other things like just eating the meat. So we got coronavirus probably because people were eating like bat meat.
Oh, but it's nice.
You look pretty.
Well, we got to be careful because that's how we got coronavirus. Yeah. So you can also get things crossing over from birds. So that's where we get avian flu, so like bird flu. And then you can also get stuff from pigs, and that's called swine flu. Yeah. So it's just because like there's poor practices that happen with how the pigs are maintained, and then if they're in close quarters and they're close with human contacts, the pigs get sick because they're in close quarters and they're not being well maintained and not taken care of. So then they get sick, and then the swine flu mutates, and when it mutates, it can then transfer to humans. So initially we won't catch it because we don't have the same receptors. So we don't have the same like block pieces to fit together. And when it mutates, then it does fit, and that's how we get infected. So coronavirus is originally from bats, and it doesn't cause any problems with bats, but it mutated it and then it jumped to humans, and it causes bigger problems with us. So, all right, can I keep going? Now that we've done a little detour to look at other animals. Okay, so that's what makes something a species. And population, you guys have probably heard the word population before. In the biology terms, we're just referring to things that are living in that area. So like when we're thinking about species, Homo sapiens is what we are as a species. Population is like the Homo sapiens that are living in that area. So like in the area of Auckland is a population. Are we good? Okay. So what we do with that gene pool then is we can then measure what the allele frequency is in that population. So we take that number and we measure the allele frequency.
Mas can a cow on a horse be the
I don't know. Google it. just keep Googling and see which animals can't reproduce together. All right. So with the allele frequency, what I want to kind of show you guys is how we do that calculation. Shall I show you guys what I mean by allele frequency? All right. So this is from the SciPad. If you guys are wondering where I got this from, it's from SciPad page 157. You see how I have a population of moths in this picture? And the moths all have different genotypes. So when I'm looking at allele frequency, I'm looking to see how many B alleles I have that are capital and how many are lowercase. And then we just do a math based on percentages. So that's what allele frequency is. Do you guys want me to calculate it out, or are you guys okay?
What?
Would you guys like me to calculate out allele frequency? Are you guys okay with that concept? So here is my population.
Oh.
You guys ready? Okay. Here's my population. With that population, you see how we have different organisms in here? And they all have their own genotype. So the gene pool is talking about all the alleles I have in a population. So that's this guy here. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at to see how many B's that are capital and dominant that I have and how many recessive alleles I have. And from that, I can figure out percentage of my allele frequency. Do you guys need me to do the calculation? Or are you okay with that? All you basically do is just go through and count how many capital B's you have and how many lowercase b's you have, and then you do a total. I figure you guys can do percentages. Okay? Equal? Okay. So that's what allele frequency is. So when we are looking at a population, that population has a starting allele frequency. So we have an original population, and that original population has variation. Can't spell today. So I will have an example. So I have a population. That population has an original allele frequency, so a original variation of different things. And I'll actually go and show you guys a kind of like online example so you guys can see what we're talking about. So can I just switch it over?
Yeah.
Brooklyn, can I switch it? Okay. So on Google Classroom, I've linked two websites to help us kind of see the population genetics. The first one I'll go through and the other two you can play with. So we're looking at PhET. So here's my little rabbit. We have one rabbit to start with. And with that one rabbit, if I add a mate, right now I only have white rabbits. So I only have one trait in that generation. And then we're gonna have the generations go through. And you see how my rabbits are breeding? So now all of them are white. And that's because there's no variation in that population. In order to get variation in that population, I need a mutation. So I'm gonna introduce a mutation that causes brown fur. And that brown fur, let's decide that's gonna be a dominant trait. So we've mutated. Now I have a mutation and I'm gonna have brown rabbits. Are we okay with that so far? So that's my first sort of thing in my population. So variation is going to be, there's a lot of rabbits now, the different traits that I have here. The allele frequency is how frequent that I see those two alleles. So when I'm looking at that, do you think I have more white alleles or brown alleles? White alleles. Oh, my buddies have been taking over the world. So remember, the important thing about allele frequency is that just because it's the dominant allele doesn't mean it's more frequent. It's all about percentage of how often we see that allele. So in this example with the bunnies, the recessive allele was the more common one. Okay? Are we good with that so far? All right, so I'm just gonna backtrack to the notes so we can add some stuff. So when we're thinking about genetic diversity and how we get genetic diversity, we get that through multiple ways. One way is through mutation. So populations can gain more genetic diversity through, and the first one is mutation, which we saw in our, what's the word? The kind of molecular section of this topic. Mutates, creates a new allele. That's how things like blue eyes have occurred. We good so far? I'm gonna go back to our bunnies. Cool? All right, let's go check out our buddies. So I'm gonna start over with our bunnies because they've taken over the world. Let's start over. All right, so I'm gonna add a bunny. In this case, when I add the bunny, I'm gonna add it with the mutation because I want to be able to get a better balance of my population. So we're gonna add this guy here, creating a mutation. And we'll add a mate. And hopefully that mate's brown. There we go. Now we got some brown bunnies. I'm gonna try to limit the food so that way our bunny population doesn't go crazy. So, what do you notice when we have these two different color bunnies? Which one can camouflage better? The brown ones. So we see in that environment, the brown one's better. I also have a snowy environment. Which one camouflages better now?
Wow.
The white or the brown one? The white. I mean, I know it's not great. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce some wolves that are going to eat the bunnies. So we're going to do it in the snowy environment. Actually, no, let's do it in the dry environment. All right. I'm adding some wolves now. Which ones are the wolves eating? The white ones. They're going to watch it for a couple generations. Got more bunnies. Wolves will come in. When I started, did I have more white bunnies or brown bunnies? What's happening now? The wolves are eating the white bunnies. And what's happening to my population? There's more brown bunnies now. Isn't that cool? I'm going to keep going and let all the white bunnies die out and let all the brown bunnies live. There we go. You see? I can switch it the other way too. So let's say I switch it to go in the snowy environment. What's going to happen? Other way around. We're going to start losing the brown bunnies. Doesn't matter. It's going to get seen in the white snow. So do you see how we can switch the environment and that's going to select for different things? Yeah. All right. I'm just going to go back. We're going to pause. All right. You can also see things like proportions. So you can see how the percentage of bunny fur color is changing through the generations. There's also little pedigrees as well if you want to see how, oh, that's cool. You can see the heritage of the bunnies in the generations, which I think is pretty neat. All right, so back to our notes and how we're thinking about what's happening. So we use the bunny example. Huh? Do you want this bit? That's okay. All right. So when we're thinking about our population, there's multiple traits. Some of those traits will be beneficial. So with our population, there are multiple conditions for traits. So one example of a trait is that it could be beneficial for your survival. Another example of a trait is that it could be detrimental, so it could be bad for your survival. And the third example is that it doesn't make a difference to your survival. So we're just going to look at those first two. So if my individual has less favorable traits, they don't survive and they die off. So if they have less favorable traits, they will die off. Now, if they die, will they be able to reproduce? No, because they're dead. So that's the end of the line. No reproduction, no passing of alleles. All right, next option that we want to talk about is favorable ones. So if they have a more favorable trait, do you think they're going to live? Yeah, they're going to survive. If they survive, will they be able to reproduce? Hopefully. They should hopefully be able to reproduce. There could be other selective pressures that prevent them from reproducing. And then if they reproduce, They pass on their alleles. So this is what we refer to as, I'm just trying to see what color I haven't used yet. I think I've used them all. I haven't used that one. So this is referred to as selective pressure. Basically deciding some of them are going to survive, some of them are not going to survive. There are two different types of selective pressure. Actually, it's more like three. The first one is natural. You might have heard it as natural selection. So in that case, with natural selection, the environment picks which is the best trait. So with that bunny example, we saw that if it was a snowy background, the better trait was the white bunny because you weren't able to see.
What's that green one?
Which one?
Down in the middle.
Survive? Survive?
I'll survive.
Yeah. So the environment selected it. So we see with the bunnies have selected based off of the wolves eating them off. So if you were a brown bunny in a snowy environment, the wolf could see you, it ate you, you died off. If you were a white bunny, that was the more favorable trait. You weren't eaten by the wolves, you got to survive. Since you got to survive, you could reproduce and you pass the alleles. So that's natural selection. And if they're surviving and passing on those traits, we can then get shifts in our species. The other selective pressure is, actually maybe I'll hold off on that. I'll finish that last thought. All right, so if they're able to pass on their alleles, we can see a change in the species, and that's our evolution. So that's our evolution. I'm running out of space. I did not plan this well. If that evolution becomes extreme, what we can then get is a new species forming. A new species can form. That's what we use as the term as speciation. So, the example that you guys probably hear a lot is about monkeys and humans and our relationship with monkeys. So, this speciation is what's caused the monkeys and us to bridge apart from each other. Actually, apes are a better example. Apes are more commonly related to us. So we have humans and we have apes. Now, we did not evolve from apes. Apes are not the older version of humans, but what is the link is that we had a common ancestor. And then through this process of evolution and through the speciation, that's how we ended up as two different species that can no longer intermix. So that's the speciation. Are we clear with that so far? Another idea? Yeah. It's important to note that when we're talking about evolution, we're not talking about individuals. So me as an individual, I don't evolve. I just have the alleles that I'm getting. The species over multiple generations evolves. So it's not, I myself cannot evolve. But if I am able to survive, I'm more likely to pass on my genes. If I pass on my genes and alleles, then that's the trait that is getting selected for. And over many generations, eventually there could be a whole shift in the species and then we get something different. So that's what we're talking about when we think about apes and humans. Apes and humans once had a common ancestor, but at some point in our timeline, different selective pressures were put on us. And with that different selective pressures, we started to evolve differently. And eventually that evolution was so different that we became two separate species. Are we good with that? All right. There's another type of selective pressure because we humans are so clever, and that is artificial selection.
How much is it talking about, please?
All right, so the second type of selective pressure is artificial. Have you guys heard the word artificial before?
No.
Like artificial colors, other artificial flavors? What does it mean?
It means fake.
Fake, it's not real. So artificial selection is human selection. So humans, because we're so clever, have manipulated things and bred certain things together to get traits that we want. And that is the artificial selection. And we've done that with crops, we've done that with animals. And we're gonna look at some pictures of some. All right, can I move it? Artificial selection. Can I show you guys some examples? Can I move it?
Yeah.
All right, so those are our bunnies. I wanted to look up, I wrote some things down to show you guys. So, where did I put it down? Okay. The artificial selection of corn. This is the first one I thought we could look at. So I love corn. It's one of my favorite things to eat. Corn didn't always look like corn. So this is what we originally started with when it came to corn.
Does it taste the same then?
No, it would taste dramatically different. Because you see how, look at that. It's tiny. It was probably very tough.
That looks like the harvest nest.
And what we did is we kept breeding them and we kept selecting them like this. So over multiple generations, and this is what humans have done, so this is the artificial selection, we selected plants with certain traits that we wanted, and eventually we got to the corn that we eat today. So that's what corn used to look like. I'll give you some more examples because it's cool to see this. Watermelon is the other one I want to show you. So I like this picture because I think it's cool to see. All right. This is what watermelon used to be like in 1648. So the people in the 1600s, this is what they were eating as watermelon. Because of the artificial selection and we picked what we wanted as traits, that's the watermelon we're eating now. And you can actually see in the old-timey paintings that that's what they painted as watermelon.
Was it ripe or?
It wasn't that it wasn't ripe. This is the old version of watermelon. But we then artificially selected for more and more watermelon that had less of the white and more of the pink. And that's how we got to this watermelon now. Huh? So they just kept picking and breeding. So like they said, oh, this watermelon has more red than pink. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to breed it for the next generation. And then each time we bred that more red watermelon and eventually we got down to here.
Oh, is that why they picked out the red?
Yeah, so they just picked out the watermelon plants that had more red. And then over generations, we were able to get this. Is that cool? What else was I going to show you? Broccoli. Let's see broccoli. So broccoli and
Let's have a cauliflower.
I want to show you this one because this one I know. Sprouts. Come on. I want to show you more. Why that's not working. All right, there we go. So here's some cool things to know. Actually, here's cauliflower. So cauliflower, broccoli, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, they all come from an old from an original plant.
A wild mustard plant?
Yep. But this is generations and generations and generations ago. So what happened was we took this one plant and we selected for different traits. And from those different traits that we selected, we were able to develop different vegetables. Because we picked plants to overexpress one component. So like, for example, for broccoli, we picked plants that overexpressed the flower bit, and that's how we got broccoli. For kale, we used the same plant, but instead we started picking out plants that had the bigger leaves, and then we eventually got to kale.
What's kale?
Kale is like a leafy green. It's a real tough, it's very bitter. It's nice. Yeah. I think Brussels sprouts are cool, because Brussels sprouts, I never realized how they grew. Where is it? So Brussels sprouts are really weird when you look at them grow. They're like these little bulbs that come off there. I never realized that with Brussels sprouts. Oh, the last one I want to show you is banana. So, here we go. This is what the banana used to be. This is what the banana is now. Same over here. You can see old banana, what we did. That's just what it originally was. And then we artificially selected for the smaller and smaller seeds. But the problem is we've done that to the extreme that now the banana plant can only produce asexually. So we don't have genetic diversity in the banana plants. And then I thought this is a cool one to see. This one's from Twitter. Here we go. So you see how there's, can I make it bigger? Yes, I can. So that's a nice, cool way to see some of the artificial selection and what things used to be like.
The avocado, why was that so big?
That's what it was originally. But we then artificially selected to have more flesh. We manipulated it.
Is that an eggplant?
That's what an eggplant used to look like.
It's an eggplant.
When this eggplant on top.
That's what the eggplant originally started as. Like, that's what it would grow to its max. But we artificially selected to get the other one. Isn't that cool?
But the banana was straight back then.
The original banana was straighter, yes. It was like that. It was tiny too.
Wait, so must that everything just go small to grow?
It looks like humans generally pick things to get more food. So we were trying to pick the bigger items so that way we could get more food. Like, you see how skinny that carrot was to begin with? And then we artificially selected. So we just kept picking generation after generation after generation. We just kept picking the ones that produced the bigger carrot roots until eventually this is what we're eating. So we did that with bananas. So yeah. Like I said, original bananas, which obviously wouldn't be ideal to eat because there's going to be so many seeds in there. Yeah?
We've had seeds in there.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
No, because we artificially selected for the seeds to get smaller and smaller. So we would breed bananas together. We'd be like, oh, I want to breed this banana with this banana because both of these bananas have small seeds. And we kept doing that generation after generation after generation until the seeds become so small. But the problem is, those seeds are so small now that they cannot sexually reproduce. So all of our bananas are produced asexually. That's why all the bananas taste the same. They're all asexually produced now. I want to see if I can find you because I saw it earlier. The downside is, though, we have lost the variety with the bananas, and so whenever there's a genetic disease, or sorry, not genetic disease, whenever there's a pathogen that comes through, it kills all the bananas. So our bananas are very vulnerable to being wiped out because they don't have that variation anymore. All right, I think that's all I want to say. What questions do you guys have? Which one? This one? Okay, that is obviously not a real picture. But that's them talking about trying to hybrid things together.
It looks like feet flowers.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Which one? The second photo.
Oh, fuck that.
So we have been artificially selecting things. If you guys ever heard of genetically modified organisms, what we're trying to do is doing this, but faster now. So we're actually manipulating genes and crossing different species together to make things that are hybrid. I think that's where the golden kiwi fruit came from, was that manipulation of genetics. So yeah, all right, that's all I got for you guys today. On Google Classroom, I put 2 websites down. This one has the bunnies. You can do this and have more manipulation, so you can play with fur color and ears and teeth, and you can also do wolves, tough food, and limited food to play with the different traits. The other link that I put on there, this one's a fun one. It's a little game. So you have peppered moths, and you can choose your forest. So you can choose a light forest. And you play as the bird.
What the fuck is the bird doing?
The bird is trying to eat the moths. So which moths are easier to find? Can you see any of the white moths?
Yeah.
We can see all the black ones. Oh, there's a white one. Oh, it's harder for me to get those.
They play them. There.
And what you're gonna see is that over time, come on, eat it. Why can't I get that one? Oh, that's not a moth. That was just the tree. All right, what do you guys see happening with the light versus dark moth population graph on the bottom? Do I have more white or dark moths?
There's more white.
There's more white.
Oh,
So do you again see how that natural selection works?
yeah.
I think that's one there. There you go. So you see, we started initially with 50-50. We had half white moths, half black or dark moths. And then at the end of my game, 90% of my moths were white, 8% of my moths were dark. And that was just because it was easier for me to see the dark moths. We can play it in the opposite direction. We do dark forest. And now it's easier for me to eat the white moths.
Oh, I can see that one.
See one there, I think. There you go. 2 there. So do you see, like I'm saying? Natural selection. Just gonna wait for the moths to stop.
Oh, it's still 50-50.
Not for long. But you see what I'm saying? It's so much easier for me to find the opposite one. So you can play this game. And you're racing to see how many you can eat in a minute. So if I'm racing, I'm gonna eat the white ones because that's easier for me to get. You see I'm manipulating the populations again. Yeah. Anyway, for this lesson, I would suggest pages 157 and 161 for follow-up, and also 164 and 165. Those cover the content that I covered today. I know it's a lot of theory that I'm throwing at you, but that's kind of like our crash course version of biology right now because we need to just get through it. All right? So there's one more content lesson, and then you guys will be ready for the whole biology exam. When it comes to the mock exam questions, we're going to give you 2 this term, and then the third one next term. The first 2 are going to be on the stuff that we've done so far. So the dihybrid crosses, the new alleles that we've talked about, mutation, those sort of things. This stuff, which is our population genetics, we will ask you next term. So if you're prioritizing your study, the new stuff that I'm talking about, the last 2 lessons, you can hold off on revising until next term. Yeah. That's everything so far. So we're getting closer through the end of our list. The last thing I'm going to talk about is natural selection, migration, and genetic drift, and what that means. Okay? That's us.
Wow.